Welcome. Tonight, we have an agenda we're following to go over the school capital plan, and we'll start now. First action item is minutes of February 12th.
Like motion favorable?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? And we don't have any remote, so we do not have to do a roll call. Second set of minutes that we need to vote on is March 12th.
Make a motion.
A second.
All in favor? Okay, so let's get right into the school. Matt, do we have any changes, or?
Yeah, there's definitely some changes. Just grab my bearings on this one here for a second.
So the sheet, if I can jump in, Matt, real
Please,
quick.
yeah.
The sheet you have in front of you, we're structuring it a little bit differently. Instead of doing it by school, we're doing it by category. So the categories are school district technology, school district vehicles, school district furniture and facilities, and then other considerations.
Did we ever get the answer to the question of, are we saving money by having our own vans?
We are saving money. I can provide that information to you, but for, there's a couple things are going on in terms of transportation. One is for out-of-district transportation, the majority of it we outsource because we have to, because they're going anywhere from 25 minutes out of town to an hour out of town. In-district transportation, there's not a lot of providers that do in-district transportation, specialized transportation. But when you do it, you just end up saving money because they're your own vehicles, your own drivers, and you have a lot more control over routing too.
Kevin, I believe it,
Yeah.
but we asked 6 months ago for a report. Just take a couple vans and,
You know what I'll do is I'll have Melissa schedule something with the subcommittee, and we can just go over it in detail with you guys.
that'd be good.
Yeah.
Because after 6 months, I've got FinCom members asking me, are they trying to hide something that they won't give us the information?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
So you will see that in your 2025 category in your sheet, you'll see that some of those things have shifted over. Parking lot study being one of them, that's moved over. The furniture as well, on the district furniture, that is, that looks like that's also shifted over. The biggest thing that we have to talk about, obviously, is you'll see on our sheet a $175,000 listing for the Stacy elevator that has since found its way into our attention with a failing.
Yeah, this is a brand new issue. It failed a couple weeks ago. It's a shaft in the elevator, and it's about somewhere between $150,000 and $175,000 to repair. The elevator was updated in 2017. This particular part of the elevator was not updated because it was in good shape at that point. But we obviously need the elevator at Stacy because we have multiple floors and students and staff with mobility issues. For the remainder of the school year, we're making accommodations of moving classrooms and things like that to address it. But there's a couple issues there. One is that the part has to almost be custom made, so it's going to take about 10 weeks to get the part in. And the installation, I think, is relatively quick once they get the part in.
So that would be an emergency repair.
This is emergency. This is 100% an emergency
Because of
request.
the
Nothing we were
special needs kids. So we can take it up for, well, here's a question. Why are we waiting till fall for that if it's,
Well, I'd love to do it in the spring if we could. We're trying to follow the process a little bit, though, and not
yeah, no, but
down yet. But
spring is emergency and special.
so yeah, I'd love to add it if we could add it.
Wish I had known about it earlier because now I think the warrant's closed and done.
This just came, like in terms of like an estimate back in the last week. So this is very fresh.
I don't know how since it would span 2 years. Because normally I'd say on an emergency like this, cover it. And then if you can't make it up, we'll cover you. But it's not going to happen before the end of the year.
Correct. And I don't know if the repair will take place until the next fiscal year either, to be honest with you. Because oftentimes we get a timeline on repairs, and it goes well beyond that timeline. We had an issue with Brookside, I think you remember this, where we had to bring in some heating, temporary heating, because we were waiting for a custom part, and we thought it was only going to be, I think, 6 or 8 weeks, and it ended up being 6 or 8 months before the, and I hope the timeline, they're rushing it for us because they know like how important it is, but these things sometimes take a lot longer than we anticipate. We have very little control over it.
But you can cover the kids in the meantime.
We've made adjustments in terms of where classrooms are.
But Al, I think you're going in the right direction, but I have this sneaking suspicion that if we don't put it on the warrant or do something in the meantime, they're going to open another school year with this still being an issue.
Oh, it's a given.
You're right. So that's why I'm like, well, I still think you're going in the right direction, but I don't know the answer with the warrant apparently closed. I don't know the status of it besides what you just said. Because you'd hate to open another school year with kids and faculty that have...
Oh, you're going through a school year and a half.
Right. That's exactly my math. That's exactly...
Because
Yes,
realistically,
your sense of urgency seems important.
if we don't deal with this till November, the next town meeting being the end of October, best you could start is November, and you wouldn't be done till,
Yeah, I mean, one thing we could do is we could kind of take that approach and say, hey, let's put it on the October warrant. We'll get the repair done over the summer ideally, and I think it's going to be close to that
but
time.
how do you pay for it?
Well, the fiscal year would have flipped potentially.
That's what I worry about is, how do we pay for it? Normally, Kevin, I'd
It's-
say cover it at the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
and if come the May meeting, you haven't been able to accrue for it, we'll cover you.
I could say 100%. We won't be able to cover it next year based on our budget. What's that?
Do we build it into the budget? Do it that way instead of a warrant?
That may be a way.
You'd rather not, for a whole bunch of reasons, but I appreciate what you're saying, because I think we share that idea of like, you don't
No,
want
what
to see
I'm-
this go all the way to
We don't want to wait.
Right.
Because this will quickly become next spring.
What I'm wondering is, can we cover
Cover it in facilities?
cover it with our emergency? What do we have, 150,000?
My guess is going to be.
Yeah, I think it's 125.
125. Could we start the project at 125?
Well, if you guys could come up with 125, we could probably get 50. Is that possible?
And get reimbursed later.
Potentially get reimbursed later for the 50? Like, we could probably cover that locally, potentially.
Yeah,
We should talk to Zach about this to try to,
well, it's a FinCom.
Oh, absolutely.
We're sitting here in April. We run the risk of not having any money for emergencies,
Yep.
but it's only for 2 months.
Yep.
Because I'm more apt to say, let's talk about it at the full FinCom meeting as an emergency. See if we can cover $1.25. You cover 50, and get the dang thing done before the school year starts. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
That would be ideal if the timeline works out with obviously the manufacturing piece and repairs, yeah. The sooner the better,
Because
obviously.
otherwise, I'm thinking you're going to be January of next year before you have an elevator again.
And the amount we got was 154, I think it was the exact amount, is that right? My worry is prices are going to go up because they've been, what's happening nationally. So that's why I'm saying 175, just in pure transparency.
Well, the number that can't go up is Brownie holds us to 125.
Yeah.
That's all we got.
But our difference could either be 25 or 50,000. I just want to be clear on that. That's why I'm saying 175, because.
Well, Craig said he's covering it, so whether it's 25 or 50,
That does sound like
You know,
a
you could.
plan.
I'll tell you when you should listen to Craig.
That does sound like, I think, a good, approach for now. And I did have on my list to try to talk to Zach this week.
He'll be here at the next meeting. He's got another meeting now.
well, let's talk
This is within the last 7 days that we got the.
let's bring it up at the full FinCom at 7 o'clock
Absolutely. Let me note that.
as an emergency that, obviously unplanned.
100%.
Okay, if we look, upgrade to network switches.
So we bundle the technology infrastructure upgrade at $239,000. And that includes all the items listed at the top there, which I got to put my glasses
Where
on.
was that in the plan?
So, if I recall right, this is a piece when we had to change over in the Director of Technology piece. Previously, these things were all covered by different grants, stuff like that. They would have the leftover money in the grant process to cover technology changes, and the Director of Technology put this into his actual budget as a line item, because some of that stuff that's come through isn't covering these types of pieces. These switches and access points are end-of-life devices. So they get to a certain point where they're no longer supported or protected
Yep.
for the vendor. So that is a piece that was identified by the technology department as needing it, and the funding is not coming from what it has in the past, from what I understand.
Well, we should start getting a little better at projecting, because end of life,
It's in the old one.
I mean, they'll tell you when the end of life is.
Yes, they generally
We
do.
know that on October 14th, Windows 10 is no longer being supported by Microsoft. So it shouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah, that.
We're having that come up at a lot of different companies
Sure.
who are in panic coming to my company saying, what do we do for Windows 11? Well, you knew it was coming for 2 years.
I'm going through that myself right now, the different place.
School feasibility study, what's that doing there?
We'd had that on there. I mean, it's already been passed, but we just kept it on there as a
Yeah,
place.
get it out. Because that's confusing. And I thought it was 2.7.
It is.
I think that was the actual, yeah.
We appropriated-
We had pushed around a lot of numbers,
did.
and I think that number stayed on the
Well,
spreadsheet.
Jonathan sent through an estimate of like 2.5. So
Something like that, yeah.
That was
immediately-
recent, right? Last couple of days?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I immediately went back and looked and said, okay, just to make sure we appropriated enough, and we appropriated 2.7.
We did, yeah.
Just in case. Okay, so, oh, you realize that your projections for 2026,
Those are a lot of those are going to move.
I was going to say, Kevin, whatever narcotics you're on, you should share them with us. $5 million in capital?
We're willing to cut that by like 10%.
Oh, yeah.
We had a pretty good discussion about that last night at the school committee budget meeting in regards to just revisiting this plan as a whole, double checking, getting more background information, and trying to schedule out more strategic layout of this. So there's a lot more to come on after this year in terms
And
of.
we're going to have to get a lot better over the next couple of years, because the shock of what a $300 to $350 million school hasn't hit yet.
I know. Yeah.
Fair, yeah.
And I really think people can't, it's just my opinion, but I don't think people can get their hands around what 300 to 350 means. And that's,
It's almost like monopoly money. You know what I mean? Like honestly, it seems just so fantastic. But that's what.
well, when
things
you
are
tell
costing.
somebody that the average house in Milford pays $6,500, and once the school comes through, it's going to move up to $8,000, $8,500, people can understand $2,000. So we're being a little cautious to say the unallocated levy, we want to protect as much of that as possible to minimize the effect on people's pockets. So this looks actually better than I hoped for this year.
Yeah, and we specifically moved a lot of things that were in 25 out because they weren't immediate needs. And like what we've done with this plan historically is we've always shifted things back when we haven't needed them. Like the vans are a great example. If you look at the vans for 26, there's 2 potential vans that we put up there. Those are the vans we use for special ed transportation. Now, we may need one, we may need neither one.
And the vans
It just depends on, what kind of service.
The vans are a sensitive issue because of the way they were bought. And that tail is going to be with us for a while. So that's why I want to get ahead of it and say, regardless of how it was done, it was the right deal to do because of the following.
Yeah, and we'll schedule that follow-up meeting. And go through that, and we'll have our transportation director there just to kind of explain the process and what the market's like.
Now, the elevator, what is actually being done with it?
It's it's basically a shaft replacement. If you give me 1 second, I can pull it up. You don't have the name. Do you want to remember the name of the shaft?
No, I don't. It's leaking hydraulic fluid, which is not great.
So it could be the hydraulic shaft.
Yeah,
Is that the piston that makes it go up and down?
yeah.
It's not the shaft.
No,
Well,
not
it's
the,
called
not,
the shaft.
not
yeah.
the shaft that you're thinking. The shaft as
Like the elevator
space
shaft.
Right.
We're not replacing the empty elevator shaft.
That's what I'm saying.
This is
It's a
the,
physical shaft, like a,
this is the important piece that keeps it going up and down, I believe.
yeah, it is. It is. Hold on 1
And
second.
while he's looking that up there was some discussion too about whether or not the elevator should just be outright replaced, but they did a ton of work on that apparently back in 2017.
I was going to say, it wasn't a few years ago, we spent a lot of money on
This was the
that.
only piece that was in great shape back when they did that, and the vendor did come back and say they don't recommend doing anything else, just fix this piece and we'll be back in good order, so.
Hydraulic jack is what it's called.
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Because when you said shaft, I'm like, I'm getting shafted here if it's $175,000.
next year.
Oh,
I was
God.
waiting for that.
Yeah, no, this... Any questions from the committee members?
Okay, two, I think. One is not about the vans, but it's not about the issue that you think I'm asking about. It's more that, and hopefully people watch on this, this is on public TV, but it's worth talking about. I hear parents talking about some sports that are not played, like I think high school sports that are not played at the high school, and then parents need to get kids a ride to the location. Like how does that work when we own our own vehicles? Like I have this this idea that the district should be giving kids a ride to these locations.
So we do in some cases, like
Not all of them?
Yeah, not all of them because we can't, because the buses are all at that time of day
Okay.
out doing the runs. So what happens is we have a two-tier transportation system. The first tier is our high school and middle school, which they open and end at approximately the same time. So Stacy and I high school, and the second tier is our 3 elementary schools, which is Woodland, Brookside, and Memorial. Well, again, have about the same. Woodland starts a little later. I think Brookside and Memorial are at the exact same schedule. And then the preschool is kind of tied in, but the preschool also has about 9 different schedules, because there's different options for parents. So there's like a midday run there too as well. So the reason we can't provide transportation everywhere is because our buses, and more importantly, our drivers, are engaged during that time of the day for the most part. Now, we have shuttles to Woodland that kids take. So our high school kids will take shuttles over to Woodland. Sometimes our middle school kids, if they have something over there.
So what sports are the parents have to drive kids for, though?
I'm not sure.
Softball,
Softball,
middle school softball.
Not high school, but middle school.
girls softball,
Yeah.
we're back to that.
Well, Al, just
Yeah.
think about
I'm
the
answering the question.
you know, you're,
I'm sorry, Craig, there's just, years ago, we went through the problem that if you were a boy sport, you got transported. If you were a girl sport, you're on your own.
The problem,
It's where the fields are. Is
well, the
issue.
problem this year is that we can't, the middle school softball team uses Memorial School, and it can't be used right now.
Oh,
So they're at Plains, and it starts at like 3:30 or 4.
And that's at the tail end of a lot of our
Yeah,
bus
I don't
routes.
know.
That's the issue.
Plus, Stacy gets out at 2:15.
I'm sorry to be sensitive about it, but that was such a problem that we had to get over
agree.
before. I'd hate to see it coming back.
I agree.
But what can we do about it?
And
can buy
we're
some
also
of the bus
told
and
it's a
drive 'em.
temporary problem, though, that the,
Vans.
Yeah, but we don't have people that can drive them.
Mr. Asm told us that that Memorial School field could potentially be open as early as the beginning of May.
This May?
Yeah.
Oh,
He
okay,
said. So we're hoping on that, and then
okay.
problem solved. We just have a.
Like I said, I'm sorry to be sensitive, but we went through this whole thing, and it was ugly back then. I was hoping we're not going back.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an important point. you know, I've got 3 kids. A lot of you guys know me personally, and it's hard if you both have jobs and somebody needs a ride at 3 o'clock in the afternoon every day to practice. And then you get into, well, which sport is it? And it seems like it might be an equity issue as well, where it's just like this. It touches a nerve for me too, even though my kids aren't getting stuck. You know, I just think like this is something I would not want to see continue. Like I will be rankled too, even though I didn't live through that. Like that's something we should figure out, because we own the vehicles and the taxpayers own the vehicles, and there is staff. And so I'm like, okay, they're not drivers, but they could probably take a test and the class and learn how to be a certified driver, right? I mean, you start thinking like
the other issue is most of the vans are out at that time too, because they're also bringing kids home. So it's not like we have a lot of vans that are kicking around at the end of the day.
I still think this plan should aspire to not have this be a problem. Like the multi-year plan should just not have that be a problem. Whether we're looking at these vans that we're signing up for to buy in a year or so, whether we're looking at our staffing of the school, and I get it, it's not as simple as I'm making it, but I'm also making it simple. Where I'm saying, like, you've got coaches, you've got trainers, you've got all kinds of support people there. I'm there sometimes in the afternoon, and there's a lot of people working, which is great. But I'm saying, like, all the hustle and bustle around these sports, like, if we have to get people certified to be drivers, then we got to figure out how to do that. If we have to have some part-time drivers, we got to figure it out, because we can't build a program, and those poor coaches are trying to build a program for these poor kids and these families that can't get to practice. I just think like that can't be a long-term problem.
Well, these are all middle school kids?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, honestly, my daughter plays on that team.
Yeah, then okay, then you know.
But there hasn't been an outdoor practice. They're playing a game today. It's at the high school. I'm not exactly sure how they got there.
Because one of the issues we ran into when it was high school soccer, the girls' program, was that some of the girls were just old enough to drive.
That's
And they
not
were
too.
piling kids in their cars.
That's not good either.
And that scared the living heck out of me, to have somebody who's just learning how to drive, transporting, a carload of kids. How do we find out what this real situation is?
Why don't I
I can talk to Pete, because Pete has probably the best understanding of what teams are impacted by it. And I hate to speculate, because I don't know which teams.
Let's not.
Yeah. And sometimes, like Craig said, it's a temporary issue because of, like, a field isn't ready, or it's flooded, or whatever.
Okay, so changing gears then, because I think you understand. MHS stuff is always interesting, right? So I mean, I think you're in that spot where we're working on a new plan for this, but there's also some projects underway. And I think it's smart to list some things in the future that maybe we do, maybe we don't do, right? But the roof is one that's gotten a lot of attention, obviously. It was not a well-kept secret.
I'm not familiar with that.
You haven't heard about it? No. But do you think there's a roof project on here for $75,000? What is that, and how do we think about that part? Is that something we look at and say, oh, that's money you're really going to spend, and it's going to be a throwaway project, for lack of better words, or potentially?
So I think a while ago we put a lot of things on there that we knew were failing, were going to fail, which is just about everything at the high school.
Of course.
Because all the systems are over 50 years old for the most part. What we're doing with the roof is we've got, and I think it's happening probably next week because of a lot of the rain we've had. They're going to do kind of the repairs of the areas that were kind of the trouble areas that occurred kind of at the time when the ice and the snow melt happened, which is not a new issue, but it was a much more pervasive issue this year. The other thing we're doing is an assessment of the roof to see, to get we've got probably 5 or 6 more years, give or take, that we have to get through, and what are kind of the real issues that we may have to either address in the near term or kind of look at.
So is the immediate repair work for the trouble spots?
I think the $75,000 was a placeholder. The near-term repair work we're handling in-house.
Got it, okay.
And the assessment I think we're handling in-house as well. And neither one of those are excessive amounts of money. I think it's going to be somewhere between $6,000 and $12,000 for the repairs, and the assessments are coming in the mid-teens, I believe, give or take.
Well, that kind of number seems manageable.
It is.
I'd hate to see, as Grant was alluding to, us spending hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Well, we may come back with something if we get some significant
Unless we have to.
after the assessment. My hope is we can continue to do repairs as needed over the next several years and figure out where the trouble spots potentially are. and we may not have to do anything, or we may have to take a phased approach, or we may have to do something significant to get us through the next 5 years.
I'm aligned with that for sure. I just wanted to make sure that we were thinking about actually spending a little bit of money to fix the trouble spots, because I think that's important versus
Yeah,
just letting it
but
continue to leak. Because you're going to have mold problems or whoever knows what else is going
Well,
to happen.
that's
It's not healthy.
I'll just speak about that one too. There's never been just a continuing to let it leak. I know this last round of problems, there was a lot of this talk out there about how we just put buckets under and let it dry. That's never been the case. There's always been the situation of the leak exposes itself, facilities bring somebody in, fixes the problem, and it happens somewhere else. So that's the continuing cycle of the older roof, right? And I can share that I did hear from someone today or yesterday that the state was in to do some testing on the leaking and the mold and stuff like that. And the initial report back was just that there was nothing significant found. I don't know what else
good.
that means. There's a report coming, so that doesn't mean that there's not something there, but no major concerns. So
And because the building's concrete, you just don't see mold. Because you see mold in sheetrock, and you see mold
makes
in
sense.
things like that.
Fiberglass insulation.
But the building's a concrete building. It's a bunker.
Yeah.
work has been happening. The assessment that was done, just quickly, was one done a couple of years ago. They do an infrared reading of the roof and show spots where moisture is. That's what's going to get redone. So they'll fly a drone over and give us what their concerns are, trouble spots, and then we'll obviously.
So they did take a FLIR camera to look at.
They're going to. That's going to be the new one. That happened a handful of years ago. We're looking for a new one, and then I believe part of that quote was that they will identify physically on the roof where the trouble spots are, and then we can send people in proactively, hopefully, to look at that and have a better look. But again, the roof is, they can't just look. They have to move material. So just to look requires, an expense.
Well, you're going to
So-
spend money just to do the evaluation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 'cause it's a ballast roof which has rocks on it, so they have to rake the rocks away.
Yeah.
And the reason, and to Matt's point too, and this might be important for folks watching at home, is when there's snow and ice on the roof, you can't access the roof to make repairs. So you have to kind of you can't have to let the snow
You got to
go.
get more buckets.
Exactly. You just have to kind of let it run through, and then as soon as that happens, we get people up there. They
Well,
assess it.
watching the movie, the reporters, it was nostalgic. It reminded me of February of '74, when the corridor down at the cafeteria had all the buckets from leaks. It's like it's come back.
Was that when the building was brand new, or was that the old?
That was 2 months into the building.
Okay.
I'm glad you are spending some money now to deal with it versus, because on here I saw that there wasn't any money on here till next year, and I was like, oh, that's worth asking about.
So, yeah, so the
Again,
only thing
you're
we
gonna
really,
have to spend some
yeah,
money
the only
on
thing we
some-
really try to put on is things that are $50,000 or greater. And everything else we try to handle within the maintenance budget. And that's between, all the schools we have across the district.
Cool.
You have a question on ADA compliance. There's almost $1.4 million in 2026 between
Yeah,
relocations.
so what we do, that's kind of a long-term placeholder, actually. What we've been doing historically is doing projects, they're generally, I want to say 50,000, but don't hold me to that, but ballpark 50,000 a year, that we kind of address ADA issues across the district. So one year we might do curb cuts, another year we might do, door handles that aren't, and make them ADA compliant. But it's kind of it's more, think of it more of a rolling number. We're not going to spend 1.4 million next year. I want to be very clear on that.
But you're still working with Rick Filani,
Correct.
because as a budget item, we put away $150,000 a year under Rick to deal with the town.
Right. And I think we've been, and Jack may know this better than I would, it's about 50,000, is that
Yeah,
right?
we split it 50 parks, 50 rec, 50 schools,
Okay.
and having a capital project fund, and we have it broken out so that you guys can access yours and so on and so
Yeah.
forth.
So the ADA compliance 350, Matt,
That's really 50,000 that comes anyways. We just put it on there just
Right,
as
I'm just saying-
recognizing that we're doing the work. So it's not 1.4 million next year.
knife that out.
So now we're down to what, 3.6 for next year? See what progress we're making, Al?
All we got to do is get down to about 1 million. Any other questions?
Do you want to talk elevators at all, now that Zach's here?
Relocations,
Yep.
so it's $1.4 million, just about.
That's what I'm saying, get rid of those.
Hey, Al, did you want to talk elevator at all, now that Zach joined us?
Oh, It's an interesting question, but I think it's more for the full FinCom. Question came up last week, the elevator failed. And they need about 150 to 175 thou to fix it. Now, it can't go on the warrant, because the warrant's already closed.
Nope, check.
To wait for the fall warrant, the end of October, means they have to wait till January before they got an operating elevator.
So is this completely out of commission?
It is.
And it wasn't known?
It was, we had done an upgrade in 2017.
Yeah.
This particular part, which is the hydraulic
Jack.
jack, thank you.
Made notes.
The pusher-upper and the puller-downer.
And I had asked that very question, like, is this something like, are we throwing, good money, bad money after good money, or good money after bad? And apparently the upgrades that happened in 2017 are still in good shape. This one particular part, which is critical, was in very good shape at that time.
Yep.
And it failed, I think, like a couple weeks ago, we just got the estimate back.
Okay. So you passed test one, it's unforeseen.
Correct.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. If you said, no, we've known about this for 6 months, so it should
Then-
put on a warrant. But,
Then you're-
so the two
Yeah, this is-
criteria is unforeseen and emergency, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like it's both. So it is eligible for the finance committee reserve fund.
And what we were
I
saying,
don't have 150.
no, but what we said was, Brownie said we have $1.25 still.
Yes.
And Craig said they have so much extra money in their budget that he'll cover.
What are your notes, Brad? What are your notes?
Is this recorded?
Sure is.
Maybe he used different words. Basically, we said we would we'll make a proposal to the full FinCom that we cover the first $1.25, and the school will cover the rest. And that way, we'd allow them to start now and have an operating elevator, because apparently they've shifted classrooms and done heroic acrobatics, but it's still,
Yeah, fortunately, we don't have a lot of students, and it's just fortunate, because if it was one of the other buildings, there'd be a lot more students impacted. It just happens at the middle school, we don't have a lot of students that we needed to accommodate for
Gotcha.
currently. But that's
You also don't want it to carry in through most of next year.
correct, because next year, we're heading into
back.
spring sports season, we could have, 4 kids tear ACLs, or, and be on crutches, which happens every sports season. So, any of those things could happen too.
Yeah.
That could
Yeah.
change that number
It meets
dramatically.
the criteria.
It's staff,
It's
too.
obviously
Makes sense.
completely under the umbrella.
we'll bring it up at the 7 o'clock full FinCom as an emergency.
Perfect. Thank you.
One additional question, if I could. The $1 million exterior masonry at Stacy,
Yeah, that's going to be bumped back. That's not going to happen next year either. I don't know how many years it's going to be bumped back, but it's not going to happen next year. I can tell you that definitively.
Right now, we're focusing on this fall, but you had asked, can we have a meeting over the summer or later? Yes, and by then, hopefully, you'll move some of these
We're
around.
gonna try to, and again, it's always a moving target with all these things, and we're probably going to shift a lot of these things back a few years. The other thing we're looking at, just as we're speaking about roofs, is we've got a couple other roofs that are coming up in the next few years that are probably going to need replacement at our elementary schools that are pretty significant numbers that are probably real. And again, I can't say definitively what year, but they're on the plan. And again, we're going to try to get that. We're going to try to maximize the use.
Well, it's amazing because Woodland's now, what, 8, 9 years old already?
This is the end of the 9th year.
You start saying, we just did Brookside, but no, we didn't. That was,
Yeah, it goes by.
2008, I think,
that was 15, 16 years ago.
2007, actually. Yeah, you're right there.
almost 20.
Yeah.
Almost 20.
Yeah. So that's why some of this stuff is starting to
So
come to the
with the
surface.
pressure of the town meeting off for now, let's get back together once you've had a chance to look it over and come up with the van idea. They promised to give us the report on the van, so we'll have that.
Let's schedule just a special meeting to talk
Yes.
about that. I think that's probably worth, because I think we can talk about transportation in general, but we can certainly talk about the vans, because I think that's going to continue to be an area of cost that is not only impacting Milford, but impacting every district in the Commonwealth. Every business manager, transportation director, and superintendent is lamenting over transportation right now, in all forms.
Yeah. Any other questions? So, action items. We have a motion for the IT upgrades of $239,000. the first two line items.
Can I ask a question before we just, do these fit within the budget that you've got put together? Because I didn't bring that with me. I just want to make sure before we say, yep, we can afford this. I don't know that, I just don't have that context.
Well, what we're doing with all the capital, until we know what's going on, because there are surprises, like $300,000 curriculum surprises.
I'm not sure I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you wouldn't. But we're saying, in theory, if we have the money, we'll support them.
Got it, okay.
That's all we can do, because until we know some of the items, we got a firing range question for $150,000, we got a curriculum question for $300,000. I mean, that's $450,000 out of $1.7 million.
Okay, I'm aligned with that. So I'll make a motion on, are we just doing the first 120,000?
No,
Or the
the
239?
the two.
That's all bundled together in one
So the
item.
school
ideally.
district technology, the two projects, a total of 239. I would make a motion on that out.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Joyce seconds it. All in favor? Sold. The second motion is to recommend to the Finance Committee that we deal with the elevator emergency repair out of our emergency repair fund up to the $125,000, and that Craig will cover the rest.
Mr. Chair, before you take that vote, I know from talking with Tom, one of the concerns would be if we deplete the entire reserve fund, which I realize is a vote for the full FinCom, what might happen for the rest of the year. So I was just reviewing to make sure I didn't misspeak, but under my article of transfers, I could probably do a piece of it, therefore saving some of the reserve fund.
Well, that'd be good.
You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
don't think I have the full 125,000 because health insurance this year took a beating. In fact, I have a deficit there, but I believe I could probably come up with 50K and at least 75K for the reserve.
For any additional emergencies.
Be smart.
So source of funding we would recommend would be 75 from the emergency fund, 50 from
A transfer. from my-
transfer article,
Yeah.
and the rest would be covered by the school.
The only issue with that, it won't be till May. Is that a problem?
That's probably not a problem. I think if we could use the emergency funds to do like the down payment for like I think we have to put 30% down to order the parts and get it going.
The fabrication started?
That would probably work.
Yeah. And I wouldn't put the 50 on as a transfer if it
Well-
wasn't going to go through.
Zach, the other thing is, worst comes to worst, if we depleted the entire FinCom emergency fund, we could take your 50 and replenish it.
That would work too.
You know, like we tell some of the departments that, go ahead and spend the money. If come town meeting, you haven't covered it, we'll move money over.
Yeah, we could do that too. Yeah.
So we'll recommend that the FinCom consider doing this, and that funding will be one of a number of ways.
Okay.
And then we can see how much you can cover over.
Want us to prep a document quick for signature?
Yes.
I'll do it.
All right, we appreciate that too.
Now,
Which location?
What's that? Stacy. Mills.
Stacy,
Stacy Middle School.
Yep.
motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Sold. And you're going to take the feasibility off since that's already been allocated. And we'll set up for a special meeting to go over the capital.
We could do late spring, early summer, or something
Yeah.
like that. We'll figure out when people are available, and and we'll do.
That can either be your meeting or ours, I don't really care.
Yeah, yeah, and I would
You
invite
can
the
call,
full,
you can post a meeting, or we can post it.
and we can invite the full FinCom if you'd like to, whoever's interested, because I think it's a big chunk, and it's a growing chunk of the budget, transportation.
That's a
overall.
good idea. The more people we invite, the better coverage we get.
There's a lot of moving pieces to it.
Any other questions? Well, we'll take a 20-minute break and then come back for the full FinCom. Motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, and
Aye,
thank you guys for
Brian.
coming in.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Second.
Joyce, second. Motion to adjourn is not debatable. All in favor? Sold. The meeting is adjourned. for any of the 6 people who watch cable TV out there, we're closing the capital subcommittee meeting at 6:40, and we'll rejoin broadcasting at 7 o'clock for the full FinCom. Thank you.